I wasn't anticipating on making a non-playoff video at this point in the year, but I mean, looking at the games, if there was a day to make a non-playoff video, it's today because Washington, Philly, Memphis, Utah. I mean, you never know with playoff games. Any games can be exciting, but just looking at those games, a little bit stinky, a little bit smelly. And well, with that being said, with the smell being said, what am I even saying right now? Anyways, with that being said, why not talk about a team that probably has the most chance to be in the postseason next year out of the teams out of the postseason? Why did I word it like that? I don't exactly know, but all I can say is one of the teams with the biggest upside, actually the team with the biggest upside, I'm not even going to say one of, the team with the biggest upside right now out of the playoffs is the Golden State Warriors. And it's for not just one, not just two, but multiple reasons why they could go from a team that just narrowly missed out on the playoffs this year to potentially a championship contender. Now, before I talk about that, if you could drop a like on the video, it just really helps out how the video performs. It would be much appreciated. Also, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I make content like this every single day, mostly about the playoffs at this time of the year, but also Warriors videos, other videos like that you might enjoy. Enough about that. Let's just talk about the biggest factor, the absolute biggest factor why this team can go from a team that was close to making the playoffs this year to a lock for the playoffs and potentially a championship contender once again. And that is Klay Thompson, Big Smokey, Killer Klay, Game 6 Klay, any of those nicknames, which I haven't heard of apart from Game 6 Klay. Basketball Reference has them listed for whatever reason. That guy, Big Smokey Klay Thompson, is hopefully going to be back. And he's hopefully going to be healthy because I'm someone who, when it comes to injuries, I'm just going to anticipate they're going to be healthy. Sorry, shoot me, but that's what I'm going to take out of it. I'm just going to hope that they're going to be healthy. And with that in mind, the Warriors are getting back a career 42% three-point shooter, a 5-time All-Star, someone who's averaged 20 points per game in 5 of his last 5 seasons, someone who averaged 27 points per game in the last series he played, which was the NBA Finals against the Toronto Raptors. He's a legitimate star, an all-star, one of the best shooting guards in the league. He makes up half of the best backcourt of all time. This is who they could be getting back. Now, they might be getting back a little bit of a hobbled version of him. That's a chance, but like I said, we're going to hope for the best and we're going to anticipate the best. And well, one of his friends, Kevin Durant, came back from injury and looked like Kevin Durant. So why can't Klay come back and look like Klay? That's all I'm going to say when it comes to that. But what Klay can do is just huge. It's huge for this team. This is a team that was rotating between Kelly Oubre, that was rotating between Kent Bazemore at the end of the season. Kent Bazemore. That's who they had in the play-in game, and you wonder why they lost. No, it wasn't Steph's fault because he averaged about 40 points a game in the last 3 games of the season to try and get them into the playoffs and did everything he could facing double teams and triple teams. They had Kent Bazemore starting against the Lakers and then the Grizzlies. Like, you switch that out for Klay Thompson, Hall of Famer, champion Klay Thompson. I mean, what are we really saying here? Immediately, upgrade. Immediately, Steph goes from a guy that you can double team, triple team, throw anything at him, and it's like, we don't care because Kelly Oubre is going to miss those threes because Wiggins isn't the most reliable shooter. Draymond Green hasn't shown any range off this season. We can just throw anything at him, and Steph's just going to have to figure it out. All of a sudden, now you've got one of the greatest shooters of all time, probably a top 5 greatest shooter of all time in Klay, back on the wings, and all of a sudden that pressure on Steph gets taken down a notch. And this is someone who, averaged 32 points a game on 48, 41, 91 shooting splits, whatever the ridiculousness it was. That's what Steph did without Klay, with Bazemore, with Oubre, with those guys. Now you bring in Klay, who's still going to be good offensively. I don't care what you say about his injuries. As long as Klay Thompson can move, and as long as he can come off screens and use misdirection to get to his spots, and Stephen Curry can draw the defense, Draymond can draw the defense, and he can just be there to shoot the basketball like he does almost as good as anyone in NBA history, he's going to be an offensive threat, and defenses are going to treat him like that, which is going to take a lot of pressure off Steph. It's going to allow Draymond to get to the middle of the floor off some of those double teams and kick it out to Klay. I know people have loved to hate on Draymond because he got to the middle of the floor on a Steph double team towards the end of the Grizzlies game and he bricked a layup. Yes, that was an issue. He's going to need to work on his offensive game, which he's actually saying he's going to do, which is another reason why this team could improve. But just talking about Klay, all of a sudden Draymond looks up after getting off that double team, which is something that happens all the time. Steph gets double teamed around that 3-point line, just a bit behind it. He passes it to Draymond at the middle of the floor, and then Draymond assesses the options and normally kicks it out to a shooter or a cutter. All of a sudden you've got Klay Thompson in the corner. That's a little bit better than Bazemore and Oubre. So that's another thing that you get from Klay. Just in general, do I really need to explain to you why Klay helps this team in so many ways? Obviously, defensively, this is someone that was an all-defensive type of guy as well. Now, that's one thing I will say when it comes to his injury. Even I, as an optimistic person, I would say defensively, he might be a step slow. That's probably something that we could expect, but even a step slow is still a good defender for Klay. If he can move his arms, he's going to be elite at shooting the ball, and he's going to make a huge difference for this team. Immediately, that takes them from a team fighting for that 8th spot to pretty much guaranteed to be a top 5 seed. I can pretty much say that with confidence that Klay does that in himself. And I think even looking at this Warriors team, a lot of people think, oh, Steph couldn't carry them. He couldn't get them over the line. They just weren't good enough. I mean, when Steph was healthy, he missed a few games. When he was healthy, they had a record of 37-26. They had a much better record. Draymond missed games. He missed 9 games. Marquise Chris missed the season. Kevon Looney was out. James Wiseman, although that wasn't actually a negative when he went out because, unfortunately, that actually helped the team when he got injured. But they lost rim protection. They lost centers. They lost other guys. Steph, Draymond, Klay, obviously. They had all of these injuries. I mean, if you look at the Warriors season, it should have been a disaster. I mean, everything is pointing at this season being a disaster. They had about a dozen G League players. They had Kent Bazemore starting at times. Oubre missed like his first 45 shots. Wiggins is Wiggins, even though he's not anymore, but that's what he should have been. That's what we expected. Now all of a sudden, he's turned into a two-way guy who can get stops on the defensive end of the floor and is generally pretty consistent on offense. Wiggins is no longer some kind of dud role player that doesn't contribute. No, he contributes in a number of different ways, and he's someone that I think could contribute even more once you bring some more scoring next to him in Klay. So all of a sudden, just looking at that on the surface, though, this should have been a terrible season for the Warriors. But it wasn't because they have Steph and they have Draymond. We've talked about Steph a lot in this channel. I don't really need to get into it, but Steph, he's probably going to be better with Klay in the lineup, which is almost unfathomable. Yeah, it's almost unfathomable to imagine someone could be better than 32 points a game on 48% from the field, 42% from 3, 91% from the line, putting up 35 a game, getting double teamed, triple teamed, whatever, against whatever defenders you want. It's unfathomable to imagine he could be better, but there's every chance he could be. So, Steph. It's Steph. We don't need to talk about him. I think we want to talk about some of the other things that might go under the radar when it comes to this team taking a jump, which is what we need them to take to be in championship contention. Draymond Green, defensively, he got back to his best. He's playing like a defensive player of the year guy. Again, he's switchable. He can do everything. He led this team to a top 5 defense. Does that say it all? They didn't have the personnel to be a top 5 defense, but Draymond did it. Now you add in Klay, their defense is going to be even better. They could be a team that's a top 3 defense. They could pride themselves on defense and just be elite in that aspect of the floor just because you have Draymond anchoring that team and making sure this team is going to be elite defensively. And then offensively, if you have Steph and Klay, you're still going to be an average team at the very least, regardless of who else is on the roster. Just having those two alone, you're going to be an average offense, potentially a really good one yet again. But having Draymond, he's someone who, as I said, he's said to be working on his offensive game. He recognizes, despite having a great season, looking like an all-star yet again, looking like a defensive player of the year, making a lot of reads, making a lot of the right plays, the right passes, doing so many things that go unnoticed, he still needs to improve. He needs to improve his shooting. He needs to be a threat. He needs to get to the rim. He needs to do these things, and he's recognized this. If he can improve on that, another big improvement for the Warriors. And then some other factors. I know it's a little bit all over the place, but there's just so many things to talk about when it comes to this Golden State team potentially being better next year. Let's talk about the fact they could have 2 lottery picks. They have James Wiseman, a top 3 pick from last year. They have these things that they could package up in a trade. Or maybe they get guys that they think are good enough to help them win right now and can help them for the future. I don't know what they're going to do. All I know is if they get the Minnesota top pick that they could get, and they're actually more likely than not to get right now, James Wiseman is an option to package up. Wiggins has a good contract. You've then got another pick that you're going to get. So many things that you can do with these assets. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm not saying one way is the right way to go, because I think there's different ways to look at this. You look at this as potentially you get guys that could build you forward, but could also be good now. But you could also go all in and go for an all-star level player, package up a trade and get an all-star level player. All of a sudden, you've got Steph, you've got Draymond, you've got Klay, and you've got whoever else you can get at that price. And all of a sudden, we might be going from, oh, the Warriors suck, the Warriors are terrible, Steph can't carry a team, to they're a super team again. Now, that's a far fetch. That's not there yet. We still need to get a healthy Klay back. We still need to see what they can do with those picks. We still need to see if they get that pick. But that's exactly what could happen. And that's why this team could win a championship next season. They could. I'm not even anticipating that. I'm just saying, in terms of teams outside of the playoffs, there is no team with a higher room for improvement than the Warriors. I think even taking out the hypotheticals, just purely having Steph, Klay, Draymond, having the improved version of Wiggins, having a guy like JTA coming off the bench who's improved drastically, whoever they re-sign, if it's Oubre, whatever, having Jordan Poole who's made a huge difference and is only going to get better, Wiseman who's only going to get better, all of these things, just off that alone, I think they're a top 4 seed. And then when you factor in everything else, that's when they start to get back into championship contention and potentially looking like one of the best teams in the NBA again. It is wild how the Warriors could be so good just next year that I think might slip under the radar just a little bit. It won't slip under the radar if they make a big trade, but as of right now, with the playoffs on, it might be slipping under the radar, but soon enough, we're going to see exactly what the Warriors do with their assets, with their trades, how Klay comes back, and I'm excited to see that. If you did make it to the end of the video, subscribe to the channel because you might have enjoyed it. Like the video. Have a great day. I'll catch you next time. Bye.